Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. I'm Nina Roesner, and I'm here with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. Today, we're going to be talking about what you need to know about trust in your marriage. Oh my word, this is a huge deal. like, there's so many things from leaving your coffee cup on the counter to I had an affair with my neighbor, like all of those things. And everything in between could just ruin the trust in your marriage. And then recovering from that, it's just a hot mess. And so we're going to dive into this really, really messy, deep topic today, because if you don't figure this out, how to create and maintain trust, how to not blow up trust, you will find that your relationship is lacking. And we want to make sure that you also know about a little exercise you can do. You can go over to greaterimpact.org and take our free marriage assessment and see exactly where you're at. Like, how hot is hot in terms of the heat, the fires of hell that you may be in your marriage. Or maybe you should become a mentor with us. Like, I don't know. Go over to greaterimpact.org and find out today. Well, Kyle, trust is the thing.
You think?
Slightly, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah. Yeah. Just a little bit.
it's you know what, in my opinion, trust is responsible for the best in a marriage and the worst in a marriage.
So tell me more about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I get the best.
Yeah. Well, being trusting and being trusted is a phenomenal thing.
Hmm.
It makes you feel like you're on top of the world in that relationship. It causes you to be able to relax and to not be stressed
Hmm.
and so 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 forth. The flip
Safety.
side of that is when we don't trust,
Hmm.
it's probably the worst thing and the most exhausting and damaging thing a marriage can possibly have.
Hmm.
Um, and of course it's I'm trying to think of, okay, is it that we don't trust in big ways or little ways or medium-sized ways? I'm not sure there's a lot of differentiation, because if you don't trust in little ways, how can you trust in big ways?
Fair.
You've
Yeah.
probably heard it said, and I have, I remember my parents saying to me when I was untrustworthy, if I can't trust you with this, how can I trust you with that?
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
maybe there's a biblical principle and a scripture in there. I
He
want to
could be
trust you with
trusted with small things can be trusted, or he who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. Yes.
looky there.
Yeah. I can't cite the reference, but that
Yeah.
one's there. Yeah.
Well, neither can I. I just
I know it's there.
lucky that I even recalled that there was a scripture about
Well,
that.
that's the Holy Spirit. He's on our side.
He is.
So you
But
said
that,
something when we first started talking about this, um, about choosing to trust, and I was like, oh, yeah. So let's dive into how trust impacts a relationship and all those things. Your text to me said trust cannot be pushed. It has to be grown organically. And I think
Mhm.
that's so true. Really, really true.
It is. I don't know where I heard this, or if I heard it, or if it if I stole it off somebody's headstone, or what. I don't know, honestly. Um, but the primary way that anybody becomes untrustworthy is I decide not to trust them. No, we can go, well, they did this and they did that and da 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 da. Well, okay, people do these things. Um, we're all fallible. We're
Hmm.
all broken in one way or the other, some of us in several ways. And so things are going to happen in any relationship. And so the fallacy of feeling like mine will be perfect, and anything that even causes me to doubt, much less trust, means that there are horrible, horrible things wrong in my marriage. And so we begin to clamp down on the trust. The trustometer is,
Hmm.
and so uh, yes, people do things that cause us to question how much we should trust them. But ultimately, they become untrustworthy to us because we decide not to. And the same can be said for the flip side. Ultimately, people become trustworthy because we decide to trust them and they prove to us that they are.
I had a client a couple months ago whose spouse had an affair, and there was a global labeling. This person's untrustworthy. And I said, "Are you sure about that?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, they had this affair." And I said, "Yeah, but there's other places where he is trustworthy. He's going to work every day. He's bringing home a paycheck. He's
Mhm.
taking your kid to soccer. He's showing up for Boy Scouts. He's carting you to church on Sunday. He takes the garbage out on Tuesday nights." There's a lot of lists there, right? So in this area, and I'm not diminishing her pain at all, but to your point, we label somebody with a global untrustworthy, and yeah, we've been hurt, but that applies in this one space. And should she trust him sexually? Probably not for a while. Like he needs to, we'll talk more about like what needs to happen there.
Sure.
But for a failure of character, and by the way, I had the great privilege of talking to both of them and working with them both for a while. He was nearly suicidal over it. Like he made a mistake,
Mhm.
hated himself, hated, right? And yeah, there was damage to the relationship and stuff. But I don't think we do a service when we label the whole person. So
Absolutely. And even in a situation of, I had an affair with my neighbor. There are circumstances that lead to that scenario. And it is not that the trust was violated because it clearly was. But maybe our energy would be better served, working on figuring out how did we get from here to here?
yeah,
How did we
exactly.
get from being a happy couple and a healthy couple to the point that that was even a possibility? That
Hmm.
didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen um, in any way, but there began to be a breakdown in the integrity of the structure
Yes, and
of
that's the
that
whole
relationship.
relationship, both people. So,
Exactly.
and I want to pause for a second because usually when I'm at this point talking about this stuff, some women get really bent out of shape. Oh, so it's the woman's fault again. It's like, hold on. You're not responsible for his sin. Okay. But what's also true is that in most cases, there's an environment that has been created, unless you've got a habitual offender, like a sex addict or some sort of situation like that. There's a, unless you get that, there's a situation created where there's an atmosphere of criticism, an atmosphere of demeaning, contempt, communication that's just so negative, mothering, that somebody pays attention to him and is kind, affirming. And nobody's done that for a long time. And he falls right in that. And yeah, it's a weakness on his part, but don't create that environment in the first place. Like that needs to be addressed. It makes it easier. It's like if you're married to somebody that's an alcoholic, or if you're an alcoholic and your spouse, is it kind of them to go to the bar with you to say, "Hey, I'm going to take us to this place," and we sit at the bar in front of the alcohol? Is that kind? Is that useful? Is it helpful? I don't think so. So there's some things that women can do to lower the potential, um, not that we're responsible for our husband's sin, but we can certainly be the most encouraging, affirming person in his life, his number one
Right.
fan. We need to be that so that nobody else sits in that seat.
I think a lot about trust has to do with, we'll just call it reading the room. Um, I have a client currently whose wife is being unfaithful,
Hmm.
and he knows it. She knows it. They haven't talked about it. Um, and there were a lot of signs that led to this situation that were pretty evident.
Mm.
Matter of fact, probably 4 weeks or so before he discovered for sure that this was happening, I asked him, you know, is there anything about what you're telling me in terms of her behaviors and her actions and her choices and decisions that that causes you to have concern about her fidelity? I'm
Hmm.
not trying to create a scenario where you have concern, but by the same token, we have to be realistic with what is put in front of us.
Right.
So whether this is about sex, whether this is about finances, whether this is about, having underground conversations with your spouse's family about them, or, things that all kinds of things can happen for us to lose trust with one another. But realistically, we've got to read the signs. We've got to read the room. We got to see what's going on and what those things tell us. And then you get into the element of, how healthy am I? Because if I see things that tell me I should be cautious, or that I should be careful,
Hmm.
or I should be watching, is my mind going to take off into another set of orbits somewhere
Right.
that exacerbates the situation? And, maybe I'm thinking about the point at which I'm going to pounce on something that's not even true.
Oh, it's like the CIA director saying, show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
Yeah.
We can find whatever you're looking for, you're going to find. Seek and you shall find. That's just the way it is. I work with entrepreneurs, usually men, and sometimes we we talk about business stuff. Most of it's about their marriage. And what's really interesting is several of them have wives that are crazy, paranoid, um, jealous about the business interactions that they have with customers, that that or the employees and stuff like that. And I marvel at the wives that are not that way.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that you have to be able to navigate those things really, really wisely. And at the same time, you have to understand that if you're one of these wives and you're out there looking for something to be wrong, you're gonna find it.
Oh, yeah.
Some of these people will actually follow their husband after he goes to work just to see exactly where he goes. And, certainly we have better things to do with our time. But
Sure.
if you look, you'll find something like it just, and that's a huge, I think that's mental illness, honestly. Like that's jealousy and paranoia at a level that is not healthy.
You're absolutely correct. And when it becomes an obsession,
Hmm.
then that's when things typically fall off the rails,
Yeah.
for sure. But by the same token, and so let's play both sides of the coin here again. There is nothing that makes me, as a husband and a man, feel more supported and lifted up and undergirded than knowing that my wife trusts me,
Hmm.
that she willingly gives that trust,
Yeah.
even though I am a fallible, flawed human man that
Hmm.
could make a mistake, that might
Hmm.
make a mistake, that might do her wrong. She chooses to believe that's not going to happen. She
Yeah. Hmm.
chooses to
Yes.
believe I am capable. Okay. I am. And all of us are, of doing the very things that we talk about not doing, and the very things that we talk about others doing. And ooh, we're capable.
Yeah.
And so it makes me feel so good and so proud and so strong in this relationship when I know that she trusts me, and her idea is the only way that I'm going to trust you is to trust you.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do something untrustworthy, you're going to do it whether I trust you or not.
Amen. Because that's about you
Yeah.
and not about her. Now, at the same time, there's boundaries. So let's use alcohol as an example. Let's say you've got a spouse that drinks way too much, you know, um, and you're pretty sure every time you buy alcohol that it's going to get consumed and there's going to be a scene. So you stop buying alcohol. That's your boundaries. I don't bring alcohol in the house. And so what they choose to do is on them completely, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So do you trust that person? Well, yeah, in 100 different spaces. Do you trust them with alcohol? Well, probably not. Like you,
Right.
you're aware of what reality is, but you're not labeling the entire person as untrustworthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where, we go with the labeling of let's just use that situation, an alcoholic. A lot of people like to say, oh, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. Or once you're an addict, you're always going to be an addict. I may have said that myself once or twice in the past. I tend now to look at that a little bit, that's a bit harsh.
Hmm.
Okay. Once you are an addict, you will always need to be aware of your circumstances, your environment, and the things around you that would set you up to find
Hmm.
yourself in that spot again.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that you have to live like an addict. It doesn't mean that you have to
Right.
carry that label. Um, and so I like to say, I like to focus on recovery
Hmm.
rather than what you're always going to be. This is always going to be something you're going to drag around with you. The
Hmm.
devil's always going to be on your shoulder. Well, less and less as time goes on with successful in sobriety and recovery. And I think other things as well. Trustworthiness inside of a relationship and knowing that, the two most common issues in marriages that cause difficulty are have to do with sexual intimacy and money. What if in my younger years, as I am not all that mature, but I'm old enough to get married, but I don't know how to handle money.
Hmm.
I haven't grown into an understanding yet of how money needs to be grown.
Yeah.
And so when I get my hands on some extra money or even maybe the couple's budget money,
Hmm.
sometimes makes purchases that are not wise.
Yeah.
Does that mean I can never be trusted or that the whole person again is untrustworthy? No.
Right.
But there's something that we all need to understand about what happens when trust is withheld.
Yeah. Let's talk
And
about
it's
that.
and it's held onto and it's almost like it's a prized possession. I have it. I
Hmm.
have within me the power for you to not be trusted. And until I release my trust, you're mine, all mine. And that
Yeah.
sounds a little exaggerated, but it's really not. Especially if you're the person on the other end of that who messed up, who made a mistake, you know, who spent the house payment or
Hmm.
lost it or did something,
Yep.
and you know it and you already feel absolutely miserable because of now what you've caused for other people and the
Yeah.
stress and the difficulty. And then there's somebody on the other end looking at you going, I know what you're thinking and I know what you want to do. Well, I'm
Hmm.
not going to let you do it, you know. And man, you want to talk about what that does to your identity
Oh man.
and how
It's so
damaging
brutal.
that is and
Yeah.
how stressful and exhausting it is when somebody won't let go of being wronged,
Hmm.
just won't let go.
Well, at that point, they're not any different than you before you owned it and took responsibility. Um, or me, right? So hanging on to resentment, anger, bitterness, hatred, whatever you want to label it, is purely demonic. It's in the way of God's healing. You can't create an atmosphere that allows people to take the next step and be safe and be supported and encouraged. And yeah, they're going to mess up again. But, I see this a lot. Um, People call me wanting to start coaching or get into one of our courses, and it's very often the same thing. The spouse will do some small thing and be proud of themselves, and it won't be enough. And they'll get a deluge of kitchen sinking of here's all the other things that I expect from you, and this isn't even close. And the person, usually the man, leaves. Why try? Train somebody to give up. That's how you do it.
Yes.
And so what people need is an environment of Holy Spirit filled love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control to make it safe for people to try and fail and try and succeed. Easier said than done when you've been hurt, but the fact that we've been hurt is because we're making somebody else's behavior about us. And yeah, sometimes it impacts us, but the way we navigate that is all about our identity, our identity. And I like to tell people that every couple of months, with your untrustworthy space with that person, you stick your toe back in, test the water, take a bit of a risk, not a big one, but see if, and I'm not talking about alcohol, don't offer them a drink. That's not what I'm talking about. But
Mm.
see, will they be kind in this space? Or can you trust them with a small secret if their issues gossip? And you've confronted that and you've worked through it. And you just see, because if you keep them as the forever sinner, that's who they're going to stay.
Yes. How many times have you found yourself with a couple who has the trust issue? Only the trust issue that is the burning issue has nothing to do with the person that's untrusted, but
Yeah.
all the people that came before them,
Yes. Usually
especially
mom or
in
dad.
second marriages.
Yep.
How often does that happen?
So it's every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking about this topic today. I have a little issue. It's within me 100%. I get super annoyed when he doesn't even know this. Like I've never talked to him about it, but sometimes we've got so many doors on this old farmhouse and I like going to bed knowing 100% of them are locked. Well, it's not my job to lock up, right? I see that as my husband's. I don't know that he does. Like we've never talked about it. But when I come down in the middle of the night to let the dogs out, if that happens, or when I get up in the morning early to let them out and the door has not been locked, I feel betrayed. Isn't that stupid? It's like, and so
Well,
what
he
if,
knows now.
oh, well, no, actually, he didn't. I thought about that. I was like, because yeah, the old me would have been lit, right? And I thought, why is this such a thing? Like, why do I feel like this? And it's because my dad would lock up and I went to bed feeling safe every single night. And I knew he locked up because he would say, I'm going to go lock up before he was. And so I'm like, well, what do I do with this? Well, I can ask my husband to lock up at night. And I can recognize that sometimes he's going to be as sleepy as I am and not do it. So how can I contribute to the solution? Well, I'm going to lock four of the 5, 6 doors that we have that exit our home. Like it's old. I can lock up some of these doors or all of them myself. Like I can do that. Um, and he's going to double check them. And so between the two of us, all the doors are locked. Like that's stopped happening. But when I forget, which isn't very often, I still have that little feeling, but it's within me, right? And if I didn't look at this the way that I do now, which is what is that about? And what can I do about this? Taking responsibility. I'd be all over him and,
Yeah.
for something invisible he didn't know anything about. Like, how silly is that? And the whole thing is within me. And I think we do that with so many things. It's really quick to jump from the coffee cup or the dinner plate left on the counter to he doesn't love me. Like in in 3 minutes, I've watched women spiral from exactly those two things or from that to the he doesn't love me. It's crazy what our minds will do if we don't rein that in. And then we act that out. And that's who he's dealing with all day. Someone who
Right.
thinks he doesn't love him because he left a dish on the counter. Like, wait, what? No, stop. Stop replaying the hundreds of things over the 28 years that you've been married. Oh,
Yeah. Well, I think that we could sit here and break down negative emotions in 100 different ways, and the most common factor in most of them is going to be fear. And fear is the driving force behind distrust as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we know somebody lives their life by the way they live it and by the choices that they make and the way they treat people with a lot of anxiety and worry and fear, it's not a stretch to see and to think and to anticipate that issues with trust are not going to be far behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, knowing yourself and knowing whether you're a fearful person or not, or whether you're a confident person or not in yourself and in others, and whether you have the wherewithal and the mental health to say, I'm going to trust and I'm going to trust with my whole heart. I'm going to choose vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
because that's what trust is. Trust is saying, I will be vulnerable and I will do it willingly. I want to, and I'm willing to.
Yeah.
And even though I'm afraid, I will move to it and through it with courage.
Mm-hmm.
Courage doesn't exist without fear being present. It does. There's no need for courage without fear because courage is being afraid and saying, yes, I will,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
spite of that fear. If you're brave, you're not afraid. You're just
Right. That's
brave,
fair.
I would like to meet a few more people like that. Maybe it would rub off on me some. But being courageous requires fear.
Well, I think, to your point, um, it requires courage knowing that the person you're interacting with is not going to care for whatever it is you're bringing to the table at the moment well, or, they have a history of that, right?
Yeah.
So having an awareness around that and yet choosing to show up as who you are, regardless, and being okay with whatever the outcome is.
Mhm.
And, I think that is something that needs to be built in relationships. Like it doesn't just happen overnight. Like you said, it needs to be grown organically. And so starting with small wins and then reinforcing that, it really encourages people to show up more in the identity of Christ. It makes it safer for both people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's, you know, a lot of people that say, well, how do you grow? That might ask, how do you grow that trust organically? And the answer is simple, but the application is difficult, you know, and that's it. You choose to trust. And maybe I'm too insecure about something right now to trust in big ways, but I will trust in small ways.
Mhm.
And so you have this, well, this individual now has to earn trust. I, I'll be honest with you. I still get stuck on that. Is trust earned or is trust given?
Hmm.
And I don't know the answer to that completely
Yeah.
because my behaviors do have something to do with whether or not I'm trusted. But I'd like to think I don't have to go out and be successful at something 10 times because somebody said, if you do it 10 times, then you're trustworthy.
Mhm.
That's not what healthy marriages are built on.
So how do you, I can hear some questions from some of my clients right now. Okay. So,
And they aren't going to like all the answers either.
right, yeah. So one husband, his wife had a shopping addiction. He like I don't think she was diagnosed, but she just kept spending money that they didn't have, putting it on a credit card.
Mhm.
for stuff. Um, some of it was legit, some of it was just not. Things they didn't need, things that were piling up in boxes in their garage, QVC purchases, those kinds of things. And he went through her purse, took her credit cards out, and cut them up in front of her and said, "We're done. I can't get you to stop doing this. It's devastating us financially, and this is harming our family." So he stopped trusting her financially in that situation. So what do you think about that? Right, wrong, trustworthy, not trustworthy? Like, what is that to you?
Uh,
What do you think about it?
Probably not a first move, but it
No, it
sounds like this
wasn't.
had been something that has happened
Right.
on
Yeah.
repeated occasions.
Yeah.
And
Ongoing,
so,
massive. Yes.
yeah. And, with any addiction or with any type of a thing that we're going to sneak around and do behind someone else's back, there's a reason for it. So what I'm going to tell them is, yeah, if she chooses at that point to say, no, I have to have these cards, there's more than one way for those cards not to be useful,
Hmm.
and cutting them up is one of them. Now, I don't know if the design was to humiliate. I don't know if the design was to
Yeah.
embarrass. That maybe the design was absolutely pure, and it's like, we can't pay these bills,
Hmm.
and you won't stop spending.
Right.
So, but like any other addiction, any other situation like that where people might be untrustworthy, there's an underlying factor. What is the insecurity that causes buying new things to make me feel better?
Hmm.
I like new things. I think everybody likes new things. I kind of have
Sure.
an affinity for old things too, but but they sometimes are more expensive than the new ones. So, where I'm going to focus is, we hear that God hates the sin, loves the sinner.
Right.
That's where I'm going to focus there as well.
Yep.
What is the underlying cause for the behavior that is causing you to be untrustworthy?
Hmm.
When I say the reason people aren't trustworthy is because other people won't trust them, I'm not saying that you should go in and, lay 100% of your trust down for somebody who's absolutely not carrying the water when it comes to being trustworthy.
Yeah.
There have to be consequences for things that we do. It's a cause and effect thing, and it
Hmm.
applies in literally every relationship in life.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you clarifying that because to me that sounded like he had some boundaries that, it escalated to that point. And then the guy turns around and hands her $100 every month. He's like, "You can do whatever you want to with this. I don't want to know. I don't need to know. This is yours. Buy
Mhm.
whatever you want to buy, you know. If you want to put it on one of those Visa credit cards, from a grocery
Yeah,
store, go ahead, order your stuff. But this is what we can do. We can't do more." And I thought that was just wild, that he would say, "We're no more here, but here."
mhm.
And that was a trust action, I think, on his
Yeah,
part, a movement towards her, a bid for
absolutely.
connection. Um, I don't know what they're doing now, but
Yeah.
I just thought
Well,
that was
and
interesting.
they're adults, and one of the responsibilities of being adult is exercising self-discipline
Hmm.
in ways that keep your family safe and protected.
Right.
Okay. And the decisions in that situation were not doing that. Matter of fact, they were putting the family in jeopardy in a lot of different ways. It probably to her was humiliating to have her cards cut up and then to be given an allowance.
Yeah, it was.
At the same time, what do they say? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
Play, behave like
Yeah.
a child. Sometimes the consequences are going to be
Yeah.
quite childlike.
Yeah.
And, adulting is not easy.
No, it's
Not.
not. There's so many little nuances to this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give our listeners around all of this today?
Well, when we started off talking about extramarital affairs, and I think one of the things that can be determined about the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them, is that they're not about They're not originally about sex.
Right.
They are about communication. And they are about a frustrated individual a person who's frustrated with their own spouse, meeting someone or being in the same environment with someone who will communicate with them in the ways that your spouse will not or does not.
Yeah.
And then things grow from there. It starts looking really good. It starts blossoming and blooming. So I would say the gateway to gaining or reestablishing trust is going to be in open, honest, transparent communication.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm not yet at a place where I can offer you all of my vulnerability where this issue is concerned, but I can be vulnerable enough to sit down and be honest with you about how I feel and what I think and what I
Yep.
want.
Yep.
How can I support you in this way? I'm mad about it. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm frustrated, but I'm still your spouse. So even though I'm feeling these other things, give me something. Give me a small way that I
Yeah.
can support you right now
Yep.
because I don't ever want to stop doing that. And that only happens when we are present for difficult and courageous conversations.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I appreciate your time and thoughts around this as usual. Very insightful. Probably rattled a few cages today. If you live in Texas, Kyle is somebody you want to meet with, and you can email him at kylehargrove@gmail.com. Is that correct?
Kyle Hargrove, LPC.
kylehargrove@lpc@gmail.com. And he'll set you up with a way to book and connect with him there. And be sure to tune into the next episode. Guess what? Dealing with conflict, here's some pointers for you. Thanks for being here.